welcome to my channel. I am Tori Lynn. Let's blossom today. So today I am actually going to be doing the fox eye makeup trend that has been going around for the last month or so. I hadn't tried this before, so this is kind of an experiment for both you and I, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. It definitely gives my eye a little more of an elongated kind of feline look, although foxes aren't felines, I don't think. Pretty sure they're like part of the dog family. That's how it kind of looks, I think. But anyways, if you guys want to see what I used and how I got here, just go ahead and keep watching. But first, hit that subscribe button. So I think I'm going to start with the eyes. One, because it's the main look, and two, because it'll make it easier to do any cleanup underneath and get those lines a little more precise on the outer edge. So I think what I'm going to do first is do my brows. Normally I don't do my brows on camera. Usually if I'm starting with my eyes, I start with my brows and my eyes already done. But I have been watching some videos, some tutorials on this. I've been looking at pictures of this, and it just seems like everybody has this real intense, like, everything is kind of angled upward to give you that more facelift effect. So I'm going to start with the brows, and I'm not a brow person, but I think that it should be part of this makeup look. It's important that your brows kind of reflect that angle a little more. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to brush up my brow hairs as much as I can. And then I'm going to draw my tail at a lesser angle. So honestly, a lot of this is probably just going to need to be concealed. If you have that right brow shape, then perfect. I do not. This one may be a little more than the other, because my brows are like not the same shape at all. I mean, this one has this really high arch. This one doesn't. Like, it's just got a really smooth arch. I don't know. My brows are just a mess, to be honest. And it's not even like over plucking or over trimming, because I don't pluck up here at all, except for right here. I get a few hairs at the tip of my tail that kind of grow in my hair, but I don't pluck that at all. It's just the natural shape of my brows are just completely different. So we're going to go ahead and start with our brows. I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Instant Lift Brow Pencil in the shade Taupe. I'm just going to go in and do the front part of my brow like always. And then once we get to that tail, that's when things are going to change. So I'm kind of just going to like bring it down a hair, but like not really, if that makes sense. Basically, I'm not even going to be using my natural brow. Now you might be able to, but my tail, basically I'm just going to have to conceal that whole underbrow there. Now for concealer, I want to use this one in my under eyes later. I want a concealer that's really going to conceal those hairs down. So I'm going to use the Benefit Boing Cakeless Concealer in the shade number 1. And I'm going to use a nice small concealer brush, one that's going to get me a little more precise. And I'm going to start in the inner brow like I normally do and clean that inside line up. Then I'm going to follow the line of the brow product. Basically all this is doing is making that inner arch a lot softer, almost more of a straight brow than super arched brow. So look how much straighter that brow looks. I think, like I said, that this brow is kind of naturally has that shape on its own. If you want, you can go and clean up the top edge. I really don't feel like it needs it too badly on this side. I feel like the tops are pretty clean as is. Now I'm doing my brows first because we don't want our brows to interfere with the eyeshadow. If you try to do your brows after, trying to conceal under the brow is just going to make a mess. It's going to ruin our eyeshadow that we are going to be putting on. So that my brows are done, I'm just going to use the same concealer I used on my brows as an eyeshadow primer. I'm just use my finger to kind of buff that out. Let's go ahead and move into the eyes. I'm going to be using the Tartelette Toasted palette. And I'm going to start with the lightest shade up here in the corner, which is called S'more. It's a nice creamy color. And I'm going to use that to set my lids, to set that concealer down so we don't end up with creasing or weird patchiness. This is just going to give us a nice soft look. It's going to make our shadows easier to be blended. Next, I'm going to go into the shade just above it, this kind of pale peachy shade called Cashmere. All my brushes that I'm going to be using today are going to be pretty small, pretty angular. They're all very petite little brushes because I don't want things to get carried away. I want to keep this pretty confined. So these are the 3 brushes I'm going to be using. This one is a smaller, fluffy, angled brush from Luxie. It's actually a Luxie 131. And then this brush says Natural Beauty on it, but I don't actually know the brand. Just a really small, a little bit bigger than a pencil brush. And then this one is an Alamar brush, and it doesn't have a name or number on it, and it's just a really skinny, flat little brush here. Just got a nice straight, clean line. So I'm going to start with the kind of more fluffy, angular brush. And we're going to be, like I said, dipping into that shade called Cashmere. And I'm going to start by pressing that down right at the outer corner where your eyeball kind of sits in the socket. We're going to press the brush down there. And then we're just going to kind of flick it out towards that tip of the brow, basically. We want everything to kind of have this more elongated, lifted look, if you will. So we're just going to want to just point it up. Now, obviously, I have dark brow hairs and they're kind of coming through. So, hold up. I think I'm going to go ahead and gel all my brow hairs into place. This will help us a little bit. For gel, I'm just using the NYX Control Freak Brow Gel. This is just going to kind of give us a really nice base, almost a transition shade. It's going to be what makes blending and all the shadows come together really smoothly. Now I'm going to go into the shade Latte here at the top. It's just a really light, warm-toned brown. And I'm going to use that same brush. And we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to step it down, you know, stamp it right into that crease, and then just flick that brush outward. I think the key with this look is to just slowly build depth. You want to start light and then work your way darker, because this is such a soft, smoky look. You know, you don't want to go in too dark to start. You want to start real light and light-handed. Now, each time that I'm dipping into my palette, I'm making sure to tap off any excess, because I don't want that dust floating around. I don't want putting too much on and just dispersing like crazy. I want to keep things very controlled, so minimal product is better. I'd rather dip in 100 times than dip in 2 times and just put way too much product down, you know. Next, we're going to go into this medium warm tone over here. It's a really kind of rusty brown, if you will. I'm going to dip into that with this more rounded, slightly larger pencil brush, and I'm going to make sure to really tap off the excess. And I'm going to do the same process as I did before. I'm going to focus that shade right on the outside of the eye and then flick it out with my wrist. Obviously, you want to have a pretty controlled flick, and I don't want to drag the product out as far as I did with the other 2 shades. I want this one to stay a little closer to the eye, but still getting enough volume with it, you know. I'm also going to work this shade down onto the lash, kind of bring that angle a little bit wider, because you kind of want to picture this as a triangle. So I want this to kind of sit a little wider on my lashes than it does out here on the edge. So I'm going to bring it down onto the lashes, keeping that angle still soft. I don't want all of a sudden just, you know, jet out and make this big line. I still want it to be cohesive and flow together. So I'm just going to bring it in a little bit on that lid. I'm going to take that original angled brush that I used, and I'm just going to tap off any excess powder, and I'm not going to dip in. I'm just tap off anything that was left on there, And then I'm just going to go and kind of soften that edge on the inside. Now I'm going to take that really small little brush and we're going to jump into the shade called Fireside. It's a really dark chocolatey cool toned brown. And we're going to stamp that right, basically we're going to continue the lash line out, kind of up at an angle. You're going to start right at the corner of the lash line and bring it up a little bit. This is going to kind of sit at the bottom of that wing that we've started. This is going to be our darkest shade. And again, I'm still really just tapping off that excess. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the last shade and kind of bring it down into the lash line, kind of widen that angle just a little bit. So it's going to be a nice little clean point out here. And then it gets a little bit wider as it comes up here because it's still meeting down here as well. Now I'm going to stop and take my favorite angled brush, or my favorite blending brush. Mine happens to be a really fluffy angled brush, but whatever your favorite blending brush is, that's been cleaned off, and I'm just going to kind of go and soften that up a little bit. And I'm just going to always kind of be dragging that stuff inward. I'm not going to be building it up or out or down. I'm just going to be bringing it in. Okay, now we're going to add even more depth into that. And I'm going to take this Trustique eye crayon in the shade Kona Coffee. It's a really dark brown. If you had a brown liner you would prefer to use, you could use that. And I'm going to take this as a Brow Gal angled brow brush that I'm going to collect that product on. And then I'm going to go into the outer corner and deepen it up a little bit farther. So I'm going to keep this right along my lash line and then bring it out, kind of make a wing, if you will. I mean, really this whole thing is just making a wing. It's just making a really soft wing, you know, a really smoky wing. And then I'm also going to keep that same brush and I'm just going to make it really flat, so I coated lots of product on it. And then I'm just using the back of my hand to make that brush really flat and clean. And I'm going to go and make that inner corner point. Now, I'm not the best at this. I did this in a video not that long ago and it didn't turn out super great, but I'm going to do the best that I can. I just know that this will help make that eye look even more elongated. The only advice I really have is to start small. You can always get bigger, but just start small and really follow the natural shape of your eye. And just see that nice clean angle. It just looks so good. Now that I've got my liner on, and I didn't bring that all the way up, if you want to, you can. I kind of stopped right about here. I stopped just before you get to the iris, which is the colored portion of the eye. And then out here I stopped about at that iris mark. So I'm not connecting them because we want our eyes to seem elongated. If you connect them here, it's going to give your eyes more of a rounded effect, and that's not what we're going for. So I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to kind of smudge that liner out just a little bit that we put on the outer portion of the eye. This will just soften things up and smoke things out a little more. If your finger isn't doing it enough for you, go ahead and take that brush that we used on the original shade and you kind of smoke it out with the brush a little bit and drag that product around. So also help you kind of drag that product out a little bit. Whatever you feel needs to be done to soften it up some. Now, the last thing I'm going to do with the shadow is I'm going to take that shade S'more again that we used at the beginning, and I'm going to lay that on the inside inner portion of the lid. Kind of just clean everything up is really all it's doing. Okay, so now let's move into lashes. Because we want to keep that angled look, I'm going to use this pair of e.l.f. lashes, and I'm going to cut them up. They're actually been used several times, so they are pretty yucky and needing, you know, just they're about ready to be done. I thought, one, that's a good reason to use these lashes, and two, they kind of have a little flare out on the edge. So I'm going to cut the inner corner out, and it's just going to kind of go on that outer edge. So I'm going to start actually by coating my lashes pretty good. I'm going to start with the Burt's Bees Nourishing Mascara. And then I'm going to take my NARS Climax Mascara. You want to make sure to really give those inner lashes a good coat, because you don't want them to be extreme lashes, but you do still want them to be noticeable. You know, you do still want lashes in there. You're going to take a little bit, and I mean just a little bit, just enough to coat those lower lashes. I'm not going to get any like on the waterline or anything, because we don't want, again, we don't want that rounding effect. We want everything to stay very angular. So I'm going to take my lashes and I'm going to cut them. Okay, so lashes are on. Obviously, lash glue is still drying. One thing I did do when I did my lashes after I cut them, I cut off about the inner corner of the lash maybe. After I cut them and I put them on, I started with them on the lash line and then brought them up above the lash line just a hair to kind of give us more of that angle. If you round them down, you're going to start that rounding look, and we don't want that. So up here, they're not actually on the outer corner. They're not actually down to the lash line. They're up a little bit. Ooh, actually, one more thing I want to do with the eyes. I want to take that same product that I used to do the liner, and I want to put just a little bit along that waterline and connect it out to the wing, and I'm only going to bring it in just a little bit. So this is really going to sit basically on that waterline. Yeah, just like that, because again, we don't want to create this rounded effect. We want to keep it very straight and angular. So now I'm pretty much done with the eyes. Let's go ahead and move on to the skin. I'm going to start by using my ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Acid Primer. For foundation, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless foundation. This is in the shade 110. I'm going to use a Morphe M6 brush to apply that. Now I'm going to take my e.l.f. Total Face Sponge and just buff that out. This gets rid of any lines. Just makes your foundation really sink into the skin. Now for concealer, I'm going to go back in with the Boing Cakeless Concealer. And I'm going to really focus this, instead of drawing a big triangle like I normally do, I'm going to focus it pretty wide over here and then make it really thin and angular out here. About like that. And then I'm going to take my sponge and blend that out again as well. I'm going to be very, very careful when I get to the point out by the liner or the wing. I just want to really make sure and keep that line nice and crisp and clean. You don't want to go into it, so you want to be very careful. On the inner corner, it doesn't matter as much. Now I'm going to go in and bake that under eye using my Coty Translucent Airspun Powder. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it nice and wide out here. And then really bring that angle in nice and tightly. And you can use the edge, if you use one with an edge, a sponge with an edge, or a brush, you can just get really precise with the placement of that product on the outer corner. You can work it right up under that wing. So now I'm going to let that bake for a minute, and I'm going to set my skin with the e.l.f. Sheer Tint Finishing Powder. I have been loving this powder lately. I think I talked about that in my last video. I've tried it in the last few months, and I've actually just really grown to love it. I use the shade Fair Light. Now normally I would do my brows and my eyes after baking, so that stuff kind of sets in, but because we didn't today, I'm just kind of going around those areas or we'll work with them in a few minutes. Now I think those have baked long enough, so I'm just going to go ahead and sweep that under eye away. I'm going to go ahead and contour today. It's not something I do regularly, but I think that this look just needs a really snatched contour. So I'm going to use, this is the IBY Highlight and Contour Palette, and I'm going to be mixing the lightest and the darkest shade because they're the more cool tone shades. This is going to give me the intensity, but this is going to keep it from getting too intense. This one is just too warm. So like I said, I'm just going to bounce back and forth between those two shades and then tap off my brush. I am using a NARS Eater brush. It's a really nice angled brush, amazing for contouring, for doing nose contour, for just giving anything with a really snatched angle. So I'm going to go right up under those cheekbones and I'm going to carve out a really good angle. The best way I find to work with this brush is to lay that bronzer down, come forward. I usually start back here by the ear. I start by coming forward and then I bring it up in kind of a circular motion. This is going to lay that product down and give you a really intense look, but it's also going to soften that upper edge. Obviously adding bronzer over top will also soften, but this is just a little trick I like to use. So I'm going to use the same brush while we have it to contour my nose, and I'm just going to use the lightest shade in the palette. Really going to tap off the excess, and I'm just going to drag that down the side of the nose, and then I'm going to bring it up the arch as well. Now I'm going to set that palette aside, and I'm going to go in with my bronzer. I'm going to be using the Hoola bronzer from Benefit. And I'm also going to use a lot smaller. This is a Morphe brush and it doesn't have a number on it. This is a lot smaller of a brush. This will kind of help keep our bronzer in a more condensed area so we can continue to keep that angle throughout. For blush, we want to keep things pretty simple because I don't want to go real heavy with the blush. So this is the Real Her Be Fearless, Be Limitless blush kit. And I'm going to use the shade called Unstoppable. It's a more mauve-y purpley shade in the palette. For highlight, I'm going to go in with my Mary Luminizer from The Balm. And again, just following those nice clean cheekbone angles. Now I'm going to go ahead and set my face. I'm going to be using the Morphe Continuous Setting Mist. For lips, I'm going to be using the Kylie Lip Kit Lip Liner in the shade Kylie and topping it off with a ColourPop matte lipstick in the shade Strip. Alright, and there you have it. This is the finished look. This is the fox eye trend that's been going around the last month or so. It's actually really pretty. It does take a little bit of technique and work to get this to look right, but I'm actually pretty satisfied with how it turned out. I hadn't tried this before. The only thing I had done ahead of time was kind of tried to go through and pull out some of my smaller brushes that I thought could work really well. But I'm actually pretty satisfied with it. There was a moment there in the middle where I was a little bit like, is this going well? I did get a little carried away with the contour, but I think in the end it looks pretty clean, pretty good, very angular. My eyes definitely look a little more elongated, which is very, I feel like, unusual for me. I feel like I typically like to go for a more rounded look, But I'm actually pretty satisfied with how it turned out. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I will see you on my next video. Bye.